Okay, so we're back after a little break, and I'd like to welcome Coach Pete Laird, who you've you've piqued my interest when talking about analytics and on the
Yeah, I was hoping I'd be here to talk football, but you want to talk analytics. So
no, no. So what I wanted to do was get get into the sort of nuts and bolts on how to actually use it in football rather than yeah. So um, when I think of analytics, I think of that sort of famous meme with the aeroplane when um, they put all armor on where the bullet holes were when the plane flew home, and then some bright spark, although with hindsight it seems pretty obvious. So, well, how about the ones that didn't come back? And in that
that's
where
right.
the planes are most vulnerable. So,
Yeah,
that
so basically that's a study, Abraham Wald study. And it's based on, it's also known as the black swan theory, whereby if you don't know something exists, then how do you know to look for it? Um, so when it comes to sort of studying analysis of football, I think one of the things, and hopefully, you might have seen the discussion that we had with um, uh, Mr. Never Punts, Coach Kelly, which I thought was fascinating because for me, like, as a student of analytics and a student of numbers and performance analysis, he tells me that this absolutely works. I still don't have the courage of my convictions to not punt if I think that the situation warrants it. So, he's a really good example of actually just entirely going with the numbers and saying actually it far outweighs, even although you will have some bad experiences of going for it. And sometimes, if you follow the numbers, it still says punt the ball on fourth and, 20 from your own 1 yard line, which to me that's just crazy. That would say punt, absolutely punt it. But, I can see why you would follow the numbers on that, because chances are you'll probably concede a touchdown anyway. So let's get the ball back quicker. So his talk was fascinating, but I think one of the things that we were discussing on that was about how you translate a basic study of your opponent, scouting an opponent, for instance, and how you would actually sort of plan to prepare in Britball. How do you use? Because let's face it, we don't have true numbers and statistics from ourselves, let alone our opponents. We're actually doing when we're scouting an opponent on Huddle is we're just charting plays. And really, for most coaches, it's a case of getting a feel for formations, for play calling, and even on its sort of simplest analysis is looking at pass run ratios. And then you can start looking at things that, what do teams like to do when they, on first down, third down, and so on. What's the go-to play in short yardage? Now, performance analysis software like Huddle allows you to chart that in. But the reality that we have is that we have very short windows of time in order to do that. So for myself as a head coach, when I'm reviewing my own footage. So if it was a game week, let's say we played on the Sunday, but we've got another game on the following Sunday, my priority becomes the scout rather than the review, even although the review will have something to tell me and will have something to tell our players. So what I try and do on the Monday is I O&D everything for our own film footage from the game past. I then turn it over to the coordinators to tag plays, so that come midweek practice, the players can review it on a Wednesday. And if it's a game week, we'll generally have a team film session, offense and defense, and as well as giving the players homework. But the Wednesday session is very much about the scout film that I'm going to look at. So I can let the coordinators do the review, and that's good for filling in what we need to. Because at practice is all about repairing, maintenance, and repairing what went wrong, but also preparation for your opponent and what you're going to do, which might be a game plan because you spotted a weakness in the scout film, and defensively it's about taking away what they do. So I focus on the scout, and I let the coordinators focus on the review. And Wednesday film night will do very little review. We won't look at it with the players. We might, if there was a couple of key things that we need to focus in on, that went wrong, that we need to adjust, then great. But one piece of advice I would always give to coaches is, like, in game week, don't focus on your negatives, focus on your positives. Even if you got beaten 100-0, you want to go and focus on the positives of the performance. And then if there wasn't, and doesn't mean you ignore the errors, you go back, you look at the errors and go, we need to correct this, and this will work. Now, sorry, I've gone off on a ramble, Simon.
That's brilliant.
But what I was going to say, in terms of scout, now, very limited time, right? Because I might get the film from my opponent Sunday night. If I'm lucky, maybe Monday morning. I've got midweek practice Wednesday at 7. So that, and if somewhere in there I've got to go to work. So I have 2 days really to analyze my opponent and, prep practice for a Wednesday night. So what am I looking at? So quite simply, I O&D any scout footage, offense and defense. I will look at run, pass, and special teams. So they're all labeled. Then I will go through, and then I will key in all the formations, and I'll key in all the plays. What I'm not generally looking at is I'm not looking at yardage gained. I'm not looking at, I will star certain plays. If they scored a touchdown, that gets logged. If there's a big breakaway play of 80 yards, I will make a note on it, because that will become one of the clips we'll want to go and review. But what I'm then doing once I've got everything logged in and I run my reports, I'm looking at some very basic information. Run pass ratio, and I'll come back to that. Okay, formations and the plays themselves. Now, when you look at run pass ratio, I found a great example that I looked at from a couple of years back, which was we were playing Glasgow in a big game, East-West game, and it was a big trophy game. And so I'd got 3 lots of footage, and I went and reviewed it to get the run pass ratio. The first game, I kid you not, was a 50-50 split run pass. Okay. Next game I looked at was approximately 66-33 run to pass. Okay, I thought we're getting a pattern here. The next game I looked at, 33-66 run to pass. So it told me nothing. There was no tendency there. There was no pattern to go on. All of those were against different opponents. What it told me that was to expect anything, to expect run and pass, which just sounds like a classic coach. Let's take away the run, but also the pass. So that sort of run pass ratio tells you very little. Where it does get into a little bit nitty gritty is when you come down into short yardage situations, or even 1st and 10s. Is there a tendency to do one thing or the other? But in Brit ball, we find not so much. There doesn't tend to be that much consistency. So the next thing I'm looking at is formations. Now, the formations I purely look at for preparedness for my players. So when we go into scout looks on Wednesday night practice, I've got the cards, this is what we're looking at. This is what you will see. We have rules for all of these formations, if it's 2x2 or it's double tight or, it's a wing tee. It shouldn't really make massive changes to my defense. I think you've probably seen my playbook once or twice, but my defense has rules for what we match up, and we don't change what we do. We might just change our alignments, but the responsibilities don't change. So for me, formations is about getting your players used to what you're going to see in the field. Don't be surprised that there's 3 guys there, or now we've got 2 tight ends. And when I see 2 tight ends, coach tells me I have to line up here, and that's it. The key really is the play. And then once you start looking at the play, Colin, you know what? There's 6 plays. Everybody's got 6 plays. Some teams like to be a little bit fancy, but primarily speaking, pass plays. You got your four verts, you got your slants, and you've got some type of progression routes, and then occasionally you get some other weird things. Here's a question for you, Simon. I'll ask you this. All right. So when you are scouting an opponent on huddle, how would you log a boot pass or boot run from quarterback?
Gosh, just pass and then roll out. So yeah.
So the reason I raise that is because it's one of these weird ones. So it kind of goes back to the Black Swan stuff. Because if you log it incorrectly, so I'm thinking back, there's a team, I'm trying to think, Newcastle, I think a couple of years ago, they had a great quarterback who used to roll out pass, and if the pass wasn't on, he would just run. Now, to me, whether it's pass or run, it doesn't matter, but how you log it as run or pass suddenly skews that ratio of run-pass tendencies. And actually, it's just one play, but you're now logging it as two, and therefore reducing the number of times you would actually see it on your tendency sheet. Oh, I've got, the quarterback's got a rollout run, or quarterback's completed, all these fades, but actually they're all rollout passes to some extent.
Yeah, so what you're saying, if he runs, we usually log it as a run, and if he passes it, but it's actually the same play. So I'll ask you, what do you do to overcome that?
For me, whether I log it a run or pass doesn't matter. It's when I describe the play and what the play is. So I might call it rollout pass option or something, something like that. So that when it comes up to analysing the plays rather than run or pass, it should show up lots. And again, that then feeds into my scout prep, which is basically they have a tendency to show you this. So watch the run and watch the pass.
Yeah.
All over again.
I mean, I find that fascinating, really good. And I mean, how I used to do scout is I kind of limited it to 6 or 7 plays. And that would be the first one. Right, I'm going to do that one because that gives us a challenge, So I'm going to do a scout card for that. I mean, it wouldn't be any analytical base. It would be, oh, crumbs, that's a challenge.
That's it. Well, that's the defensive coaching, right? You're saying that's difficult to defend, so we need to prepare for that. But the flip of that is I have seen, when I've prepped for a team and I've looked at lots of scout film and then you've seen one weird play and you spend far too much time thinking about it and how to take it away because that one time they ran it, this thing would really sort of pull your defense all over the place, whether it was a trick play or whatever it was. And I remember years back, we were supposed to play Chef Hallam in the playoff, and it was the year all the playoff games got cancelled. And I had seen something in the scout film for them, and I thought, wow, this is just, I've never seen anything like this. We need to really prep for this and take it away. And then after multiple viewings, I suddenly realized it was a broken play. Stuff was being made up on the play as it went. And, and yeah, as a coach, I got dragged down that rabbit hole of then thinking about how do we prepare for this. And if it's one play out of 300 snaps I've looked at, why am I wasting time at practice, going over this one thing they might see? There's no point in even scout carding it.
Yeah.
All you would have to do is maybe highlight it in practice. Okay, we have seen this one thing. Okay, we'll just show you it. We don't think you'll see it. Okay, but the normal rules of our defense apply.
I think I've done that with empty before. And I spent a whole practice defending empty and then never seeing it. But...
Never saw it, yeah. And there's nothing worse, is there? Do you know when you prep and you see a lot of scout film and this other team comes out and just does something stupid? What are you doing?
I'm not so worried if it's the other way around. I mean, if they're doing something they've never done before, I'm not worried because they haven't practiced it enough to worry us. But when I've spent too much time on something, then yeah.
I mean, for me, that is a classic thing about offensive formations. I mean, as you know, I'm a defensive coach, and it wasn't until I sort of dabbled a few years back, and I needed to improve my understanding of offenses. And so just by educating myself, it was like, okay, so actually formations are just ways to disguise the same thing over and over, and actually they're not doing different things. They're just putting people in different places to drag defenders across the field. And when you understand that as a defensive coach, it's kind of reassuring, that actually these offenses are just, so it's a lot of window dressing going on here.
Yeah, it gives them better angles and more space in certain areas. But
I'm being very dismissive, clearly, to offensive coaches.
No, I agree with you. I mean, don't get too tied up with it.
Yeah, it's again, I've seen like teams that will stack receivers or send guys really far out to the boundary, and it's still an inside run.
Yeah. But that's like you say, that's rules based for your corners and people. Yeah, no good being outside alignment if he stood on the sideline. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's just understanding the game. So, is there anything from the analytics that really helped you? Like you think, good examples of where you found it and say, "Oh, this is really going to help us in a game or to practice against it."
So for me, I think my advice to any coaches using analytics is you're time poor. You're really restricted on what you can do. You don't have Rich Wurzels sitting upstairs churning out reams of computerized data. And you're relying on you inputting the data, because we're even when we get scout film, it's very much I've got to spend time in my lunch breaks, firing in what I'm seeing from an opponent. So what you need to do is just come up with a very simple strand of what it is that you want to get out from it. Don't waste time putting in lots of information. So I think I gave the example of, I don't care if they ran for 1 yard, 4 yards, or 42 yards. If they got a touchdown, yeah. And if it's a big play, I want to know about it. But actually, I'm looking for on the film itself, I'm looking for good examples of where this play was successful. And I'm looking also to generate some basic numbers. Hang on, I'm just looking at an example I've got here. So, for instance, I'll give you that favorite plays tendency, the percentages of how many times they ran certain things. So, if it was a 21 dive, 33 lead, or, particular passing three routes, those things should then allow you to prep more effectively at your midweek practices, or you're, prepping for that game. One of the things that, again, I would encourage all coaches to do is, like, in a game week, is not to, you've got to prep for your opponent, but you've got to prep your own game as well. So, don't spend the entire practice just, running scout, because you'll end up losing what you do.
Yeah.
I think, to go back to your question was, have there been times when analytics has helped? And I would say definitely. There are times where we as a team have been overmatched, and we're definitely, a less skilled team. But just being able to prepare effectively and prepping your athletes, if they know what's coming, they play with confidence. And so if they can, get onto the field on Sunday and reflect back to Wednesday, I've seen this in practice. I know what to expect. But, even on game days, players just totally have mind for it. You can spend hours prepping them. I mean, I'm going way back here, but when I was in my days at Glasgow, we were prepping for Loughborough in the Northern Conference final, as it was. And we had watched them on film. I say film, it was VHS back in that day. And in fact, we'd had to travel to Loughborough to film it ourselves. No internet. we come away back from that and go, they've got one play. They've got the counter, right? They ran the counter play after play after play, and they were really good at it. So we prepped our guys all week. Counter. We were 21-0 down at the end of the first quarter to 3. And, and after that, we stopped them. The players eventually calmed down because obviously, big game, the players lose focus, and it doesn't matter how well you've prepped them. If they stop thinking or relying on what they have learned, they panic and they go into reaction mode as opposed to cognitive mode, where they're thinking about, I know this, I'm prepared, I'm confident. Because you'll know in basic sports psychology, if players are overhyped, they just lose that ability to concentrate and to focus. Likewise, if they're underhyped, they come out flat.
Yeah.
So get that right balance. And again, if you've got 60 people on the field, how do you get them all pumped up at the same time? As an aside, sorry, I'm talking a lot here, but as an aside, that's why I always laugh at pep talks, because a pep talk you give to your players 10 minutes before kickoff, so they're all wow, and then they're walking around, for 10 minutes doing card checks and they're all really hyped for the kickoff, and then I'm offense is on first, so I'm a defensive player. So what am I doing with that pep talk right now?
Definitely.
So for me, a pep talk, you know what? You can rah and you can get the guys up, but you should also your pep talk should consist of, remember on Wednesday, we went over. This is what we expect to see. This is what this is what we can take away from. This is what I want to execute. It should be game focused rather than woo.
I completely agree with that. Yeah, just give some information, even if it's a little bit fired up. So
yeah, angry information.
I've just wrote a note. So you were talking about you make a note of when you're looking at Scout and they score. Now, is that because you think it's going to be a good play, or you think the coaching staff are going to be on the opposition side, are going to be, oh, that worked last week, we're going to use it a lot this week?
So there's a brilliant clip from the NFL, which I use in my classes when I'm teaching my students, to do with analytics. And it's from a New England Patriot, Bill Belichick, of course. And he's in a game where they've already won, and it's garbage time in the fourth quarter with about 4 minutes left. And he starts running stuff that they haven't run all year. And they get to the end zone, they score the touchdown by using an unusual play from a different formation. And Tony Romo's on the commentary, and he basically says, why he's doing this? It's to mess with the analytics of other teams who come back to scout them. They're not going to look at the fact that this 4 minutes was comprised of garbage time. The data gathered here was basically useless. You're as well cutting it out and not looking at it. It's like what happens when you put on your backups, right? That you will not be as effective or efficient, because that's why they're your backups. So things that you will see in games that you're scouting where the one team's getting absolutely crushed or winning by a lot, you almost have to put to the side, and don't be afraid to discount some of that stuff, because actually we might not see it, or actually if it's a close game, the backups aren't getting in. The difference would be if you've got a backup quarterback that's, wow, they're amazing. They change the game up. We've seen teams that will have a passer quarterback and the running quarterback.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, so the whole point of analytics is it's supposed to be objective, right? You're bringing objectivity into your analysis of sporting performance. You're viewing people just by numbers. So the whole thing about Moneyball, the film, was, the true story. As popularized by the book first in the film. The whole point of Moneyball is like don't look at how the guy throws the ball or, you know, their size or shape. Look at the numbers. And, you know, but that only works to an extent. Objectivity still has to have some type of subjectivity when it comes to breaking down, you know, what's happening. You have to be able to go, that was garbage time. These are backups. The great one I always remember when we first did Great Britain students, you and I together. Well, no, not the first time, second time. So back 2012, we're talking here, and we had floods of applications in from people. So, and then we had to pare down all the applicants to invite them to trial. So I think we had something like 450 odd applications, and we could only take about 150 people to camp. Now, how are you breaking that down? So the first thing we looked at was, what's your 40 times, height and weight, what age are you, what's your, it was bench press scores, I think was what we were looking at. Now, even then, those things are completely diverse. So if you looked at a group of linebackers, you know, you had guys that were, you know, might be able to lift a ton of weight, but were only 5'4". So in all of this data, what we're not looking at is the football. Can they tackle? You know, we might have a gorilla out there that's just, you know, absolutely hench Scotsman that's ready to go out there and, you know, look the piece, but he might be absolutely awful in terms of technique. So we had to devise a way, and you might not remember this, but what we did was we used a combination of numbers to start to filter down, you know, by height, weight, and then some of the physical attributes. And then we went and looked at the film. Then we went to see, right, you know, what's this highlight reel like? Can they tackle? What are the stats for the year? You know, what the coaches say about these guys. You know?
Yeah.
And that's when you start bringing the interpretation in of something. So it's never truly objective. If you were just writing something about, you know, numbers that were purely objective, then we wouldn't have had all these breakthroughs in performance analysis that we've actually got. You know, we would still have airplanes that were getting shot down.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I find it fascinating. It's just the way you've got to get that middle ground, haven't you? Really, there's the purely analytic, and then there's the sort of scouts in a Moneyball that are saying, well, his throwing looks ugly, and you've got to kind of get into that middle ground where you take both perspectives and make a decision.
I'll tell you one of my pet hates from the sports world, which is used in kind of with pretending to be performance analysis, and it's from the world of soccer, football, right? You watch any football game and there's a commentator on there, and we get this a lot in Scotland, is talking about, oh, they're a really great technical player. And, you know, usually Scottish teams are getting bossed out of Europe. The commentator goes, oh, you know, well, this team's just technically superior. I'm like, what does that mean? Define technical. Can they kick a ball? Can they pass it? They can all kick and pass. They can all run with the ball, or they wouldn't be out there. They all train. In fact, they all play for the same friggin' teams. Why are they technical? That's the Liverpool captain out there. He plays for Liverpool as well. Are they doing different training? No, they're not. But they're technically superior.
Yeah.
Define it.
I think they just need to say something, don't they?
It's a pet here, I know.
So just going back to recording, you sort of piqued my interest with the sort of the boot pass that could turn into a run. So broken plays have got to be a challenge there, because quite often broken plays mess up all the angles of pursuit and it becomes a big play. What do you just record it as a broken play, or what it was supposed to be? Or
yes, you're right. I would record it as it was supposed to be, but tag it with a coach's note to tell me that this was a broken play, and actually, if it was of interest, you know, so we're assuming here this is a broken play that's something stupid's happening. It's resulted in a touchdown, and you know, therefore it's that might be something worth discussing in film session with the team, because, in the same way a trick play was, this was a breakdown, and you can see why they scored, because actually the defensive team, the safeties came down thinking it was a run, and actually ended up with a pass, easy touchdown. So and you use that as a little bit of warning to your secondary. Just remember, stay at home. Don't assume it's going to be this. You've got your rules and jobs and responsibilities. But you're right. I would tag it as what the play was supposed to be.
Right.
So 21 dive, but actually,
if you can figure it out.
Yeah.
Centre quarterback exchange.
There is a lot of guesswork in some of the tagging. Some of the angles of the film we get.
Wow. Yeah.
Some crackers.
And to be honest, we spoke to the officials, and they said we don't get great film. And I've got to be honest, in the South we do get great film, and I'm like sat there going, oh well.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. But I think one of the things that came up in the analytics chat that we've had recently was that, I hope we're all past the point of sharing film with everybody, and all coaches take that as standard now, and it should be happening. But I think one thing that would make our lives easier is keeping the ODK tags in for their coach. I'm just saying that. I'm putting that out there as an appeal. I've met a couple of coaches in my division who were great with that, and they were brilliant. And actually, you know what? That saved us time. So, if we could all just agree to do that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, because actually that takes ages.
It's a headache, isn't it? I mean, you don't need. You know what? If I do it for you, you can do it for me, and then we'll all be happy.
Yeah.
I can have a lunch hour that day.
And Huddle even flips it for you, so when you exchange
exactly.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time, Pete. I really appreciate it.
Simon. It's always a delight, and I'm sorry I've been so elusive for so long, but
That's great. I mean, I've slowed up a bit on these conversations, but I've got one planned for next week as well. So hopefully.
Well, I have other media commitments. So, yeah. You're right at the end of the line, Simon. So. No, please keep doing them. I'm really enjoying them. So
thank you very much.
You're welcome. There's one thing I forgot to tell you, just in terms of an easy take-home analytics, right? End of season, I review all the games, and I went through the scores of all the games. And partially, initially, I started doing it just to determine, what the scores were, and just to chart out scores by quarters. And what I quickly found was that actually we were being outscored in the fourth quarter, pretty much in every game, despite the fact that we were winning. I think this is a winning season I was looking at, and we'd won 6 games that year, but actually we're being outscored by our opponents in every fourth quarter. So that told me we're unfit. Just as simple as that. If we are, winning games but fading and not scoring in the fourth quarter, because all of it is Edinburgh Napier Knights, right? We don't blow opponents away. we squeak wins. But it just showed me that obviously the team wasn't as fit as they needed to be. So as soon as I learned that, one of the focuses on my team training became increasing cardiovascular fitness, as part of add-ons to trainings. So we would do additional running, sprint drills, and giving the guys more CV stuff as part of the programs. Flipped it around. We became a better team in the fourth quarter over the next few years based on a program that we just installed, just because actually we weren't that fit. Because I'm a big believer in practice time is for football, and you get fit in your own time. But actually, in this instance, it's having an effect on the results of the team.
And what a great selling point to all your new players, that telling them that story. I bet they all hear it first practice.
Get fit. We're going to run
you. Because.
Yeah. But that's the thing. You got a lot, it's 4 quarters, right? You got to outlast your opponent. Perfect. So you got to be fit to do that.
Thank you for that tag on.